You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent Z optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues on the mainframe and how BMC AIME and BMC CompuWare Solutions can help you build a mainframe-inclusive DevOps toolchain. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. In past episodes, we've talked about improving the developer experience with modern tooling and interfaces. Today, we'll be discussing the role of automation in helping to advance mainframe modernization and enhance the developer experience. Joining us today are BMC Lead Product Manager Mark Schettenhelm, Senior Solution Engineer Manoj Singh, and DevOps Architect and Evangelist Tony Anter. Mark, Manoj, Tony, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt.
So a recent Forrester report on the state of mainframe DevOps, and I'll put a link in the show notes, found that 83% of organizations are implementing DevOps practices, but most are still failing to scale adoption. Tony, what are some of the issues that may be causing this failure to scale DevOps adoption, and how can automation help?
Well, I think the answer to the question is in the question. You're bringing in a lot of tooling, and you're bringing in a lot of things, but you're not really answering or automating those repetitive tasks and those things that every engineer or company needs. You're not really helping them out. So I think you need to not just look at automation and DevOps. You also need to look at solving those user problems and those user experience problems and focusing on the day-to-day operations of engineers and developers in order to push that adoption. You got to remember, a lot of the people that we're pushing this out to have been working the same way, using the same stuff for 30 years? And now all of a sudden we're bringing them a new way, but we're not really solving those day-to-day problems. We're trying to recreate the same system in a new tool. So we have to look at each one, and make sure that when we're solving developer experience, that we're taking those repetitive day-to-day tasks and we're making it easier for the developer.
And this is Mark. I just want to say, Tony, you said something that I thought was really interesting, and something we don't think about is it's about the developer experience. And I think a lot of times with DevOps, we're so concentrated on pipelines and hooking this to that in the pipelines and DevOpsy stuff itself, but we're not thinking about the effect on the developer and the developer experience and how automation relieves them of these tasks. And maybe focusing more on how this affects the developer rather than the pipeline and the workflow is a good way to look at it.
I think you hit it right on the head, Mark. It said it much more eloquently than I did.
Thank you.
The Forrester study also found that 71% of decision makers find automation key to mainframe modernization. Mark, why do you think decision makers feel that way?
Well, I think they're right. And in fact, I'm surprised it's only 71%, because it really is the key. If we're going to modernize the mainframe, we really need to speed things up and get better quality. And if you continue to do things the same way you've always done them, that is going to be impossible. If you want to link your mainframe development with distributed and develop and deploy together, you're not going to be able to do it if that's the same way you've been doing it for 20 years. So you need to change, and part of what's changing is the automation that Tony talked about before. Is you need to automate a lot of these manual tasks and lift that burden from the developer, and that's really where you save a lot of time. Because why would you want to have your developers do manual testing or manual code checks when they could be done behind the scenes while they're off doing something else?
I'll share one more stat. The Forrester study also found that 53% of organizations prioritize automation of repetitive tasks to free up time for developers to innovate. Tony, how does this freeing up of time and increased innovation benefit the developer experience as well as efficiency?
So, think about it. If I can do more in the same amount of time with the same amount of effort, or maybe even decreased effort, efficiency just goes up. If I can deliver 20 story points this sprint, but next sprint I'm able to deliver 25 or 30 or 35, again, I'm not talking about working weekends and extra hours. I'm talking about with the same exact level of effort. That's the definition of efficiency. And I don't know about everybody else, but I know I didn't get into development and engineering in order to fill out change ticket requests or to fill out TPS reports. So all
those are my
little,
favorite parts, Tony.
Yeah, and to each their own, Mark. I think that's great. But for me, I love the ability to sit there and develop, work on solutions, put out cool capabilities, innovate on the applications that I'm doing, and not worry about the minutia. And I'm not, when I say minutia, it doesn't mean it's not important. I mean minutia as in the paperwork, the busy work, the things that you want to automate. And we should automate everything we can, but not everything should be automated, if that makes sense. And the cool, innovative stuff is what developers should be focusing their time on, not on filling out reports.
Yeah. And, Tony, to add to that, I think sometimes we've all had that where there's some developers and say, oh, if only we could clone them, right? I need more of them. And we all need more developers. And I think we sit around going, oh, if only we had more developers, only we had more. And yet the answer is right there in front of us, is if we can automate some of these manual tasks, like you mentioned, you end up cloning your developers and they become even more valuable because they're doing the smart things rather than the just rote things.
And that probably helps. I know we've talked in the past about attracting new talent, but it also helps kind of rejuvenate veteran talent. I would think the increase in efficiency would help give some people a fresh start.
Oh, definitely, because you might be in your career and you're really into like the architecture and really in the code and you're so good at that, and yet you're getting bogged down by this mind-numbing things. Having the automation is a great lift to you, and it probably would keep someone in their career longer because it would be more stimulating and interesting, and they would be out there providing more value, and it will make more sense.
SRE has a term for this, and it's called toil. And I think it fits beautifully here. The idea of toil is the level of effort you have to do to accomplish something. And what automation in the context of what we're talking about does is reduce that toil. And it's important on the DevOps side, just like it's important on the SRE side or the operations side.
So we've somewhat touched on this a little bit, but some developers may feel that automation will threaten their positions. Manoj, how can increased automation be positioned so that developers know that you're lifting their burden rather than replacing them?
Actually, being a developer for a very, very long time, I don't think that's a true thing. Developers need not be threatened by automation. If anybody, the traditional manual testers that used to be, organization as dedicated position for testing manual tests, they may be threatened, but developers need not be. If anything, they would be actually more empowered because they have, like Tony and Mark said, with automation, they have more time for innovation and adding new features and more rapidly with minimizing the errors during the software development process, making it faster and more cost effective and improve the team's collaboration. I give you two examples why. One is automated tests, right? It's part of automation. Automated tests are primarily created so that they can be repeated and can be extended, and thereby a developer can be assured that, his code, any good developer wants to test, right? So automated testing allows a developer to actually be, confident about his code. And the second example I'll give you is with all this DevOps, the DevOps paradigm, this whole concept is where it's leading is automation, everything, meaning everything as code. One example is infrastructure as code. So when everything is being, like, for example, you can manage and provision the infrastructure through code instead of using manual processes. What that means is more and more of this is getting into a code, and code means obviously has to be written by somebody, developers. So developers need not be threatened. Where this DevOps is going and automation is going is giving them more power in this DevOps paradigm.
I would add one thing to that, and it's an example to correlate what Manoj is saying. When we look at like the Industrial Revolution and as tools became automated, when they went from a hand drill to a mechanical drill, it didn't reduce the amount of people that were needed to make furniture. It just meant the amount of furniture that they could make greatly increased.
Right.
So to Manoj's point, no one should fear automation coming in. Automation is there to take out all that grunt work that you're having to do today and make your job a delight, which is the ultimate goal of this and the ultimate goal of DevOps.
Well, building on that, the overall topic here is making automation easier. Manoj, what is BMC doing to help organizations facilitate automation? How are we integrating with best-in-breed tooling?
Oh, yes. BMC has been in the forefront of automation, I would say. We have plethora of integration technologies available, from REST APIs to command line interfaces to native plugins for all the popular DevOps tools in the DevOps tool chain. So pretty much anything anybody wants to do can be integrated using our technologies. So, and that is one of our biggest strengths. So we do integrate. We have the open borders policy with our integrations. So anybody who can consume a REST API or can be called from or from CLI is a target for our integration. So you can integrate pretty much everything.
Our open borders policy truly gives developers freedom to bring in whatever they want. To Manoj's point, we have native integrations to go with all the best in class, all the most popular tools, but that doesn't mean it's everything. So if you have something that we don't currently support or we don't currently have, we have the capability for you to quickly and easily create that integration. And that's something that every organization needs to understand, right? It's not you coming and bending to us, it's us coming and bending to you.
So, Tony, in the organizations that you talk to, are mainframe organizations a bit behind distributed in terms of automation?
Absolutely, yes. I don't even need to elaborate on it. Yes,
All right.
They are, and it's not that they're less sophisticated than their distributed counterparts. They've gotten a later start. They're behind in the race because they started later, but they're quickly catching up. And if you look at how automation trends went with DevOps when it came into play 10 years ago, and how it's unfolding on the mainframe, you're seeing the exact same patterns. You're seeing the exact same road that the distributed guys have traveled, and now the mainframe guys are getting on. And I'll be honest, while I would say as a rule they're behind their distributed counterparts, there are a couple who have actually pushed ahead a little bit, and in some areas are more sophisticated.
I just want to add to Tony. I totally agree with Tony, and I can give you a personal example of that, because I think it's mainframe development has been late to the whole agile thing. But then, like Tony said, they're catching up. And I was part of the agile transformation team within CompuWare exactly 10 years ago. And when I was interviewing the teams, the mainframe teams, they were giving me that their stories take 9 months to 18 months. And now we are churning out releases or features every 2 weeks. So yes, it's just that we were late to the game.
Well, they may have been a little late, but they've arrived. This has been a great discussion. Mark, Manoj, Tony, thank you again for taking part. And thank you to all of our listeners. We'll talk to you next time on The Modern Mainframe. Take care. You're listening to The Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent Z optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues on the mainframe and how BMC AIME and BMC CompuWare Solutions can help you build a mainframe-inclusive DevOps toolchain.